Thank you so much for coming on the platform. It's definitely an honor.
I'm surprised you've had some wonderful guests, and
Thank you. I appreciate that. You don't work with some icons, man. I'm excited to hear about it.
yeah, it's quite a story. Trying to figure out where to plug in these headphones, but I guess it's okay. Is it feeding back on you?
It sounds good.
Okay, check. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So I know you got moves to make, so we're gonna get right into it. Thank you for coming on the platform. Like I just mentioned, you worked with some phenomenal artists. So, that just let me know the magnitude of the work that you contributed. Some of our favorite albums, favorite songs, favorite groups, you've been a part of those projects. So for the viewers who may not recognize you, let them know who you are and definitely where you from.
all right. Well, I'm Mark Five now. What Compton, you call me Mark Feasy, but back in San Francisco, I call me Mark Five. Um, I got into um, the studio game in 1986. I bought a studio in San Francisco, so I'm from San Francisco. And from the get go, I started to work with rappers. It was a time where there was a lot of bigotry towards rappers for unjustified reasons. And I opened my studio to all the hoods in San Francisco, and that was a kind of like a peace place. Everybody could cross paths there without any problems. You had Hunters Point, the Fillmore, and uh, numerous other neighborhoods that were beefing at the time. Um, I I was a rock drummer, but when the rap game came along, I was feeling it because they were talking about guns, dogs, dope, bitches, all that, women, everything. And I had a criminal background. So I was feeling all of it because I had guns, dogs, all that stuff. And so, I mean, right away, I was feeling it. And so I just made a safe place for people to come make music. And we made a lot of music there. I did Andre Nickatina. He was known as Dre Dog at that time. I did his first two albums. Um, uh, and I wrote the beats to Killer Whale, Situation Critical, and a few other tracks on the second album. Those are kind of Bay Area classics. Some people wouldn't know what I'm talking about, but um, it turned into quite an icon, you know. And so that distinction didn't come along till later because we didn't know it at the time. We were creating classics. Um, so I worked with, well, San Francisco was kind of a small pond at the time. And so um, I moved to LA in 1995. Um, and I hooked up with Bone Thugs almost immediately. Uh, it was kind of funny because when I moved to LA, I didn't know too many people. My girlfriend lived there. Um, and I had my own studio in San Francisco, so I had my own juice back then. Like I had power there. I come to LA and it was like a whole nother game. So I sent out like 120 reels with a resume, and three studios called me. And one of them wanted me to make sandwiches. The other one wanted me to be a runner, but the other one needed an engineer. And they said, do you like work with rap music? And I said, yeah, that's my thing. That's what I do. And they said, well, we Bone Thugs comes through here all the time. They need an engineer. I said, okay, I'm your guy. Let me in on this shit. And they were just coming off their Grammy win, so they were rolling high, and there was a lot of action. So I just put the work in, and I earned the respect. And I was with them. Well, first I did Flesh's solo album. I think it went gold. I think I met Run DMC and a bunch of people on that. Later, I went on to work with DMC to produce a couple of tracks for him, for Daryl. And then I did the Mo Thugs album, which was kind of dicey, talent-wise, I suppose. But there's some good stuff there. And, of course, most of the members of Bone came through. I was with Lil A and Crazy most of the time. They produced that stuff mostly. There's some good tracks on there. And then I did some solo stuff with Crazy or Lazy. I can't remember anymore. But then they moved on, and that was the time when Easy had died and Tamika had taken over their contracts, and they weren't particularly happy about that because, um, well, E took care of them. You know, he signed a pretty good contract in his favor, but he broke them off. You know what I mean? Like he took care of them. And then when Tamika stepped in, I think a lot of that stopped, and that was pretty upsetting. So I was, I got to see a lot of that go down, that kind of drama, for what it's worth. I have some other stories about Bone, but I'm kind of reluctant to get into that. It's kind of private stuff. But it was a once in a lifetime experience. Truly talented guys. Uh, Pretty much an original sound. I'm sure it came from somewhere, but they perfected it. They were quick in the studio with their vocals. Um, Not a lot of takes like we do these days. None of this 15 takes and comping every line. We didn't do that. You had to be pretty quick punching because they had a fast flow. Um, so that lasted a few years, and I guess at that level, I started to work with some other people. A lot of people came to me then because, for obvious reasons. And so I went on to work with a bunch of other people. And actually, you just asked me where I was from. Now I'm telling you my whole life story. So you got any questions so far? Or?
Yeah, man. Wow, that's phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing that. Like you say, Bone Thugs, that's some people favorite not only rap group but musicians on earth. So to be able to be a part of multiple projects and work with them for years, man. Some people just dream about even meeting them. And those are just as much your songs as well because you contributed.
Yeah, well, I was mostly their mix engineer. Um, I It was hard to get in there with beats, when you're the engineer. You kind of stay in your lane and don't upset the apple cart, like people. There were a lot of producers, and there was a lot of the usual drama around getting a slot on the album. And my manager was like, "Don't try to get into the beat thing with them because you're wearing the engineer hat." And I felt that, like, I get it. But shit, man, I didn't. I tried anyway, but
Yeah.
I almost got a couple of slots, but it got blocked. But I was mostly known for my mixing. That was my thing, and recording, of course. Um, I After I don't know. Well, let me tell you why I had to move to San Francisco, L.A. And I back in San Francisco, I was still being a dope man, and that's how I bought my studio. Back then a studio was a costly affair. It wasn't, a computer, and you had to have a console and a tape machine and all kinds of outboard gear. None of this plugins, and so to finance that stuff, I was bringing down dope from Humboldt County, and I'd lived up there for a while, and I was there during the early years when it was kind of easy, and I brought down the skunk weed for the first time in like 1981, and people went crazy. And so I was able to augment my salary with, smuggling. But I took one risk too many, and I ended up getting shot twice in the back of the head, execution style, during a ripoff. And um, so I always tell people, if I know them well enough, and at this point I don't care anymore, I say it took 2 bullets to get me to come to LA, because I talked about it for a long time, but I knew my life had changed when that shit went down. And sometimes God does things for you that you can't do for yourself. And uh, that gave me my opportunity to go to LA. Otherwise, I might still be in San Francisco working with, Bay Area guys. But there weren't, other than, I don't know, MC Hammer and a couple of people like that, Too Short, E40. Some people were, creating revenue, but a lot of the guys were just living the lifestyle. Back then, they were talking about what their life was. They weren't, middle class. These kids were, having life experiences that I was somewhat familiar with, but that's what they were rapping about. They were the real thing. And I just felt it. And I had to get schooled, I had to get schooled on it. Like, the 808, and how to mix it, not that they knew, but they showed me the way. And so I kept an open mind. I learned. And I had a lot of peers that were, why are you working with rap music? Why aren't you doing the rock music? I said, well, I don't, why are you, let me tell you, if you like the music, then they're doing something wrong. This music isn't for you, man. So don't worry about it. Talk about, it's glorifying violence. I said, well, go to a movie. You're going to see more people shot in a movie than you ever going to see in a song, So it was a bit of a road. And of course, I had to earn the respect of the artist because, unfortunately, at that time, there weren't a lot of engineers that were black or any color except white. They just hadn't come along yet. They didn't have the proper they couldn't get the schooling for that. There weren't schools back then for that, and I just kind of came off the street and learned on my own because I really I was passionate about it. So of course, whenever I walked into the room, I had to earn the respect of the clients because for obvious reasons I need to do my job. And once anybody, I don't care what color you are, once they see you can do your job, then you're in. And I got into a couple situations where some of the hangers on were, I'm not gonna say hassling me, but they were annoying me. They were like, "Give me a cassette, man." And I said, "Nobody gets a cassette unless you're an artist. You're not getting a cassette." "Well, I'm, so and so's cousin." I said, "That's cool." "Well, you don't like me?" I said, "I don't know you." That kind of stuff. um,
I appreciate you sharing that because a lot of fans take it for granted, what it takes to make a record and the obstacles that you have to face. Like even when you said, you was mixing for the Bone Thugs record, like mixing in itself is very, very, very important. We don't get to enjoy the music if it's not mixed right, and then let alone working for a group like Bone that raps so fast and they rap and they singing and they rapping. You got to be precise with the mixing game, to make them sound as good as they, are.
yeah, you gotta know your job. You have to put in your 10,000 hours. I mean, that's what they say it takes to become an expert at anything. And since I own my studio, and I mean, I spend all the time there, and I, being a drummer, I had some feeling for beats and stuff, but I taught myself keyboards and basic stuff. And when I moved to LA, I went to USC and took some music classes and kind of upped my game there. Now I can write a lot of beats and produce. Producing comes later. You have to learn your ears. You have to learn to trust your gut. You have to. It's a whole nother thing than mixing. Producing is in the music world sometimes means being the creative. Sometimes not. Sometimes you're just booking the time and kind of executive producer type shit. But producing in the trenches is, you know, figuring out where the breakdowns are, and, you know, calling the shots if the vocals are, you know, off or rushed or whatever, you know. And you only do that by sitting there for a long time and figuring out what's right and what's wrong. And producing an act, you know, you really got to have the respect. You know, mixing is one thing, but producing is kind of intimate in a way, because you're taking their material and fucking with it, you know. So it's you have to have the right approach. A good studio engineer, only half of it is twirling dials. The other half is vibing the session, right? You got to vibe the session. You can't be trying to run the show. You know, it's their show, and it's your job to capture that, not to tell them, oh, that doesn't sound right, unless you're producing. Then you can take that liberty. But I didn't. I think that's part of my success is I didn't try to produce when I wasn't when I wasn't asked to produce. You know, I just did my job and captured the sound as best I could. And also, some artists were pretty mercurial. Some had substance abuse problems. Some didn't. Some, you know, when you're working at a certain level, I suppose you've earned the right to be entitled to certain things. But abusing your engineer is not one of those things. After coming to LA, I put in about, let's see, 80, 95, I did about 10 years worth of rap music, you know, and I worked with everybody except for, Suge, you know, because I already heard that, you know, you didn't get paid. So when I was approached by their people, I said, I didn't say no because I didn't want to, you know, insult anybody. I just said, I'm booked, you know. And then, you know, they only asked a couple of times and they stopped asking. So I got my way out of that. And, but eventually the time came where I wasn't getting younger, and you know, a lot of the rap cats like to work at night, all night. I didn't want to live like that anymore, you know, as I was getting older. And so I switched to, well, first I went to my management and I said, I don't want to do rap anymore. You know, no disrespect against anybody. It's just I'm kind of over the late hours. And they go, oh, okay. And then I get a phone call. Can you work with West Side Connection at 10 p.m. over at so-and-so studios? No, man. You didn't hear what I was saying, huh? I said I could do R&B. I could do whatever, man. So I kind of had to pay my way, but I started doing Afro-Cuban records, which is a specific genre. It's not Latin. It's Afro-Cuban. And I probably did like 20 albums over a period of a few years. And I worked with some of the best musicians out of Cuba. And so they started calling me Marco Cinco. And they had a much gentler vibe, less stressful. They were like, I could say something like, I erased all the tapes accidentally. It's okay. Have a beer. You know, like other people would shoot you, you know. But the Cubans, you know, it's in their blood. And one of the albums got nominated for a Grammy, and that was a great experience. And just meeting the musicians of that caliber, the American jazz musicians have a saying: when the Cubans arrive, it's time to practice, because those guys are great. And I worked with some pretty named cats. One of them being Chucho Valdez. He's probably one of the top 5 piano players in the world. But I finished an album that he was doing, and I went to Hollywood Bowl to see him. And backstage, he said, "You You very, very good engineer. You know, I said, you're all right for a piano player. The whole room, laughed, but he laughed, but it probably wasn't funny. But um, and then the music business started to change, as you're probably aware. Physical downloads or physical units stopped being sold. Um, Streaming started to take over. Budgets dropped, and when the budgets dropped, there were less artists to work with, and engineers had to take a pay cut if they wanted to work at all. And yeah, it was like when I made the switch from analog to digital with Pro Tools. I knew guys fell off then, because they couldn't make the switch. It was, they couldn't go from the analog tape to the computer. But I had been working on the computer since at my own studio. I learned to sequence and program drums and do all that stuff. So actually, with Bone, I was able to double charge the label because they had not only was I engineering, but I forgot what they labeled it, but I was sequencing for them because they didn't know how to do it. And a lot of guys would come in with their beats and they'd have like a MPC 60, which was cool, and but they didn't know how to separate the outs or anything. They didn't know, and you pretty much need separate outputs so you can control each instrument. You don't want a stereo mix. It's not at that level. I mean, nothing wrong with a stereo mix if it's done well, but I prefer to have stems, or the multi-track, so I can do my magic. I can't do much with the stereo track because that cake's baked, right? I can't take any of the sugar out. I can't add sugar. I can't do nothing. So a lot of guys didn't make that cut, and then when the streaming thing came, and they had to take a pay cut, pretty much, or less work anyway. Some guys were okay, but I wasn't. I kind of work slowed down quite a bit. But I had invested some money in real estate, and um, so I kind of took it easy for a while because I'm 66. So when I was working with Bone, I had to be in my 40s. That's like an old man. If anybody's going to be an old man, it's going to be the engineer because they make the best engineers because they've been around. But it was a young man's game, from the artist side. So I had to make a decision about what I wanted to do, and I'd always been writing beats. So I got a publishing deal for a while where I got some songs placed in Pimpin' Your Ride, Soul Food, Soul Plane. And I can't remember all of them, but some of my tracks got picked up by publishers, and that was not much of a living. It was better than nothing. And it was a hustle. And as physical units went away, the artists, they started to offer up their catalogs. So all of a sudden, my competition were like the real guys, not other guys like me. Like, they needed to create revenue because they weren't selling records. And streaming pays, tenths of a cent instead of, 15 cents a record for songwriters. So I tried that for a while, but it's pretty tightly controlled, and you got to be connected. And that's in the record business. There's quite a turntable. Guys don't last that long, and so the guys I used to know who used to have juice weren't around anymore. There were a few I called, and it helped. But the older I got, the less connections I had. I developed relationships with some of them, but even they lost their jobs or got cut or had to move on. So yeah, it was kind of tough. But I did okay, and I all the beats that my publisher didn't take, I had my godson Stylie Ray. We wrote a lot together. And I said, we should just put all our tracks up on Spotify or something. And instead of letting them sit there, because there's some, some pretty good tracks, some not so great, but we put them up, and I didn't know much about the game, but mostly they sat there and got a few thousand streams, nothing to get paid on. But then I started to learn the game of promotion and, playlisting and all that stuff. And then my chops started to improve, and I started bringing a lot of features. And now I've got, a few thousand streams, not enough to make a living, but something. And now I have a manager who's helping me navigate these waters. So the last two tracks I did were less West Coast rap and more, R&B. And they seem to be going over pretty well. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell, along with a lot of other adventures.
Okay, wow. You man, you touched on so many things, but I gotta go back into it. Like you broke down the economics because a lot of times even the artists don't even understand, let alone the fans. Like you say, you getting a tenth of a cent, just for a stream. Or once they went digital, a lot of the audio engineers they couldn't find work, and that's a lot of stuff, a lot of information that the fans should know about. They may have more appreciation, or they may show more support for the music industry.
Yeah.
So we can have high quality music, high quality engineers. So I thank you for going into that. Definitely. Have you ever thought about doing like a book or a documentary or?
I lost you. I lost your vocal.
Oh,
There you
can
are.
you hear me?
Now I can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Last thing I
yeah.
heard was you're going to thinking about doing a documentary on.
Yeah, but would you think of, have you thought about doing a book or writing a book about your journey, or even the documentary? I'm sure you got pictures and video footage and different things and music.
Well, oddly enough, Andre Nickatina and E40 brought a look. I don't really have any secrets. I had a lot of adventures as a dope guy, and even in the music business. And they hired a cameraman to come down to LA, and they were thinking about doing a TV show, that kind of thing, and with people of interest, Instagram girls, pimps, dope guys, whatever. And they filmed me doing I just started talking, man, and they took that stuff and gave me the YouTube cuts of what they did, um, and then I started writing some of my stories. Well, actually, that's how it started. I started writing some of my stories, and Andre got a hold of some of them, and he's the guy that actually thought about shooting me, and he's been wanting to do something with me for a long time. We haven't done anything yet, but then I met a Hollywood at the Hollywood. I met at Barney's Beanery. I was there with a friend, and the guy was there to interview his friend, my friend, and then he ended up starting to talk to me. And then he took my number and said, you mind if I call you? And I didn't think a thing about it. But a couple of weeks later, he said, man, I want to talk to you about your life a little more. So he came over with the tape recorder and told some more stories. And he wrote them down and said, cool, I'll get back to you. So then he called me in a couple of weeks and said, I have some more questions for you. Do you mind if I come over? I said, no, I don't mind. So he got into a little more deep, And so this guy ended up writing a whole TV series about loosely based on, inspired by my life. He took some of the friends I had and exaggerated some of it. He wrote a TV show. My life in of itself is probably not a TV show. It'd be kind of slow, maybe. You got to do certain things in television, but so he wrote this. He wrote a pilot and a episodic index and a bunch of things, and he's been shopping it around. And we took some meetings, but so far we haven't bid on anything. So to answer your question, I kind of have started to delve into that. It started with me writing like 2 or 3 page stories about what happened to me and what what it was like and all that stuff. And people usually find it pretty interesting. I haven't really been pushing them because I'm not sure what to do with it. But my manager is. I just started my website. It's not quite ready, but it's almost ready. It's markfeasy.com, and on it they have a few of those videos. He edited them to keep them a little shorter, but are TikTok friendly, as he says. And there's also my beats. And I was saying, yeah. So I started a group called the Problem Children, and it was me and Stylie Ray, and then we just bring in people like Andre Nickatina and guys from Compton and just whoever we wanted because we didn't give a fuck. It was our music, and we weren't really trying to do much, and we just did what we liked. And some people liked it, so I'm continuing with that. I'm going to try to grow the Problem Children. I don't have any illusions about it, but it's nice to have a project like that, a creative outlet. And I continue to write beats, and so I'm selling some stuff. My stuff's a little more sophisticated than some stuff. It's not an 8-bar loop with some dropouts. It's got breakdowns and bridges and shit, but it's still kind of, I don't know. It's me. I like trap, I like trap, so it's influenced a lot by trap, and but there's also some other stuff, So I hear a lot of beats out there. They sell beats by the pound, but they're not done that well. I mean, the music's great. I mean, it's some real dope shit. I mean, really, but they don't know how to stem it out or how to mix it. That's a whole nother game. I don't know how many guys came to me with a shitty mixed great beat, like really shitty, like can't hear the snare's not popping, the kick's not cutting through, the bass is distorted, there's a lot of that, man. So my whole thing is to create quality, and I don't need to sell beats by the pound. I put a lot of effort into my music, so if they want it, they're going to pay for it, but they're going to have well recorded tracks. I can assure them, and I'll even if they cut their vocals, I'll mix it at a cut rate, So I'm trying to create some business for myself. Yeah.
I can dig it. I can dig it. So we passed the 30-minute mark. I had wanted to
Okay.
ask you one more question.
Sure.
You had mentioned working with Andre Nickatina back in the old days, and reconnecting with him now. You had spoke on working on that Situations Critical. That's a classic. If you could just talk about what was that like putting that together,
I
and what
can
was
tell
that
you exactly what
experience
that was
like?
like.
Because the
So,
video is dope.
yeah. So, and part of that was filmed at my penthouse in San Francisco. Uh, I engineered his first album. It was called The New Jim Jones. And, he was signed to Intimate Records, Jason Blaine's label. He had a lot of people sign. Um, but I wanted to get in on the beat thing, because I was watching guys do the beats, and I was like, okay, I had a lot of experience to draw on just from I've been through some shit, so I could feel what I was writing. You know what I mean? I've been in jail and all that stuff, but so I called Andre, or I paged him. We didn't have cell phones. We paged him, right? And I said, I got some beats, and I could tell he wasn't so excited about that. And he does an interview where he talks about it. It's kind of funny. And he talks about not wanting to come over because, it was the engineer. He's a white guy, and it just couldn't be that good. But he came over, and I popped on Killer Whale first. And he was like, oh, I'll take that one. I said, okay. He goes, that's all I want. I said, come on, man. I got more. So the second song I played was Situation Critical. He goes, I want that one. I said, you can have it, man. And I said, and he goes, okay, well, I said, no, man, what is it? You limited to dudes can only have a couple slots or what, but I ended up doing about 6 tracks on that album. You Ain't My Folks. I don't know, but Situation Critical. He just knew the vibe he wanted, and honestly, when he heard Killer Whale and Situation Critical, those beats, that helped him to define what the second album. He says so himself. I'm not speaking for him. I only say that because he says that in an interview. And we've been friends all this whole time. I wish I didn't have to leave San Francisco, but I kind of had to with that situation, and meant leaving Andre and some other people I'd come close to, and but he went on to make a great living for himself, and so I pretty much bribed him with some good Indo to come to the studio and listen to my white boy beats, but they turned out to be pretty fucking funky, and they became classics, and so that's what happened.
Wow, man. Thank you so much for getting him to come to the studio to pick those beats, man, because those are like that's his wave right there. You know what I'm saying? When you think of
Yeah,
Andre, you think of those.
yeah, right. And he recently did a symphony in San Francisco with a string section, like a 26-piece orchestra. And I went down there and emceed one of them, and they played Killer Whale, and it was fun.
Wow, wow. Okay. So man, I just want to thank you again for being patient with me. I apologize about the internet
Hey,
problems we was having.
that doesn't
We
matter.
finally got it done. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot going on. And I appreciate you for your contribution to hip hop, and like I say, working with some of the finest musicians on earth, and giving them some of their best records. I definitely look forward to what you're doing now, making more beats, working with more artists, and releasing new products. Is
Yeah, my
definitely
honor, man.
inspiring.
It's my honor to be a part of that movement. And even though I was on the outside looking in, I soon became on the inside looking out. I earned my right. You know, I earned my right.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
yeah. Anyway, so thank you. I appreciate you picking me out to talk to. And um, if you ever need me back again, just let me know.
Oh yeah, will do. I'll reach
All
out,
right.
and I want to thank the viewers for tuning in. It's been a phenomenal episode of Taye Speaks. Until next time, family. Peace.
All right. Later.
All right.